Hey everyone, we are Team Misfits. I'm Wabali,
I'm Maddie.
And I'm Anthony.
and this is Beyond Busking. To give some context about our research, we started by defining what a busker is, and that is a person who entertains a public space for donation. Pearl Street is a popular place here in Boulder for busking, and we were interested in finding out reasons why people busk and how their experience has been, particularly here in Boulder. The research questions we had to guide our research were: how are the identities of buskers communicated through their interviews? How can communicative experiences reinforce a busker's decision to perform? And what factors can have an effect on the communicative interactions between buskers and their audience? Our site, of course, was Pearl Street Mall, and it's located at the heart of Boulder. Art murals, art galleries, cafes, eco-friendly shops all align each side of the mall strip. The smells there vary from food to sweet aromas coming from shops like Lush. And the visitors there tend to be more diverse in personality and backgrounds. Our methodology, we started by watching the buskers perform for an audience and then ask them to interview after their performance. Our interview type was ethnographic, which means it was informal and emergent. Um, and then we also created an interview guide with probing questions that delve deeper into the personal lives and motivations of the buskers on Pearl Street.
Self-reflexivity. There was a connection to the site as children watching the performance. Sense of nostalgia from previous experiences. Connection to the personal narrative being told and emotional labor.
My personal connection to the site was having memories of visiting there when I was younger. My family and I would spend a lot of time. It was one of my favorite places and activities to do. Um, so that being said, I had to kind of not have a bias or judgment towards the place just because of my familiarity with it. Yeah.
So I do also have a connection to the site. I remember very vividly as a kid being taken there and just being really excited to go see the performers. So when I did get to the site, having to set aside like that excitement was definitely important because I even got excited about watching the performers. Um, we definitely had to do some emotional labor. I know with my participant, he was telling a really sensitive narrative with, information like, he had to pay a certain amount to get to Boulder that day, and sometimes he would come home with less than an amount, and he has a child to feed. So trying to keep my composure and being professional in that moment was definitely a challenge. It's definitely something that we have to consider when interviewing these people because we really don't know what's going on in their personal lives.
And for me, I had a strong connection to the personal narratives that were being told. Coming from Australia, I wasn't really sure where I was what I was walking into, and Pearl Street had a very positive energy and vibe. As one of the buskers that we did interview was from also out of the country, and felt that the site that he was performing at gave him a really strong connection and helped motivate him to keep going. So I thought those connections really drove me to this busker. The findings were people's decisions to perform are due to a sense of self-identity or a collective identity. So this can be to perform for money, the love of the performance, a family connection, if you have a sponsorship or a promotion, finding their identity within the community. Everyone is unique and has different motivations. Identities were shown through the way they were self-constructed and presented themselves through the past, present, and future.
So one of the first limitations that we ran into was the weather. It being that we were doing this study during the wintertime, Pearl Street's not very busy during the winter, especially when there's snow, and performers typically don't like to go out if there's not a lot of people. So it's this big web of connections. So if the weather's not right, the people aren't out, then there's not going to be any buskers. Another limitation that we ran into was the sample size. This also had to deal with the cold weather as well as COVID-19. We were only able to get 3 in-person interviews. We wanted to do some mediated interviews, but it's honestly really hard to find someone who's a busker on Pearl Street online if we're not, physically at Pearl Street to meet them and then potentially set up an interview. So, and then obviously COVID-19 hit, as you guys know. It just really put a damper in our plans because we couldn't go out and get some more interviews. But to conclude this research, busking serves as a form of escape for a lot of these artists. They're unique in their own fashion, and it's definitely not an easy task for them. They all have to have perseverance. They have to overcome a lot of obstacles, such as people walking by shouting things at them, distractions. It could be a police presence trying to remove them from the location, and especially business owners. I know a few of the participants revealed that businesses aren't very accustomed to having them in front of their business. So yeah, but in the end, we found that the data was subjective and it was unclear because there's no definitive answer as to why buskers busk. All their answers varied in some sort of fashion. Our findings aren't representative of the entire busking community in Boulder, as that was one of our limitations with our sample size. But if there is one thing that we could take away from this and recommend for you guys is that at first glance, don't judge these artist performers. Show a little bit of compassion and empathy. Give them a smile, a wave, especially tip them too. A lot of them are out there for those reasons. And we just don't really know what's going on in their personal lives. So I think to not make any sort of firsthand judgments would be recommended here. So we appreciate you guys sticking this long. These are our references, and if you guys have any questions, feel free.